Captain Lee Tae-ho stared at the message on his screen for the third time. The words had not changed, but he kept hoping they would. The red seal of the Galactic Council glowed at the top of the document, making his small office feel even smaller than usual. The message was simple and terrifying. Humanity had 7 days to reveal all military assets to the Council, or face immediate economic sanctions and possible military action. No exceptions, no secrets. Everything had to be disclosed. Lee rubbed his tired eyes. He had been captain of the Orbital Defense Station for 8 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his personal communicator. There was only one person he could call about this. Admiral Park So-jin, came the crisp voice after 2 rings. Admiral, we have a problem, Lee said quietly. The Council has issued an ultimatum. They want full disclosure of all human military assets within 7 days. The silence on the other end stretched for almost a minute. Lee could hear his own heartbeat in the quiet of his office. They want everything? Park finally asked. Everything, Admiral. No exceptions. Another long pause. Captain, I need you to come to Luna Base immediately. Take the fastest transport available. Tell no one where you are going. The line went dead. Lee stared at his communicator, knowing that his life had just changed forever. He had heard whispers about Luna Base, rumors that most officers dismissed as fantasy. Now, he was being summoned there by the highest-ranking officer in the Human Defense Corps. 3 hours later, Lee found himself on a military transport heading toward the moon. The pilot, a young woman named Lieutenant Kim Soo-jin, had asked no questions when he showed his priority orders. The ship was fast and quiet, designed for missions that required discretion. As Earth grew smaller behind them, Lee thought about the galactic situation. Humanity had joined the Stellar Federation 30 years ago, after first contact with alien species. It had not been the peaceful meeting that everyone had hoped for. The aliens had been polite but firm. Humanity was too aggressive, too unpredictable. They would be allowed to join the galactic community, but under strict supervision. Since then, humans had been careful. They followed the rules, attended the meetings, and tried to prove they could be trusted. Human ships were smaller than alien ones. Human weapons were less powerful. Human colonies were fewer and farther between. Everyone said it was the price of peace. The transport docked at Luna Base just as the Earth was setting behind the moon's horizon. Lee had expected a small outpost, maybe a few buildings connected by tunnels. Instead, he found himself looking at a massive complex that stretched deep into the lunar surface. Ships he had never seen before sat in hidden bays. Personnel moved with the quiet efficiency of people keeping important secrets. Admiral Park So-jin was waiting for him at the docking bay. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Lee had met her only twice before, but her reputation preceded her. She had been in command during humanity's first real test in space, when pirates had attacked a human colony. The pirates had been defeated so completely that no one had tried to attack human targets since then. "Captain Lee," she said with a slight nod, Thank you for coming so quickly. We have much to discuss and very little time. She led him through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were lined with screens showing star charts and ship movements. Personnel saluted as they passed, but Lee noticed something different about them. They moved like soldiers who had seen real combat, not the peacekeeping forces that most humans served in. "Admiral," Lee said as they walked, "I have to ask, what is this place?" Park stopped walking and turned to face him. "This place, Captain, is where we keep humanity's real military. The ships and weapons that the Council has never seen. The assets that have kept our species alive for the past 20 years. Lee felt his mouth go dry. "That's impossible. Every human military asset is registered with the Council. It's been that way since we joined the Federation." Park smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Captain, do you really think humanity survived first contact by being honest about everything? Do you think we built colonies and defended them with the toys the Council allows us to have?" They continued walking until they reached a large observation deck. Park pressed her hand against a scanner and blast shields retracted from the windows. Lee gasped at what he saw. Floating in the space beyond the moon was a ship unlike anything he had ever imagined. It was over 1 kilometer long, dark as space itself, and bristling with weapons that hurt to look at directly. The ship seemed to bend light around it, making it difficult to focus on any single part. "Captain Lee Tae-ho," Park said formally. "Meet the UES Vengeance, humanity's most closely guarded secret. The ship that has protected our species for 20 years without anyone knowing it existed." Lee stared at the massive warship. "How is this possible? How did we build something like this without the Council knowing?" "Very carefully," Park replied, "and with the help of people who understood that sometimes survival requires keeping secrets. The Vengeance was built in the outer system, using resources that officially never existed. It has been our guardian angel, dealing with threats that never made it into official reports. The Admiral activated a holographic display that showed the ship's specifications. The numbers were incredible. Weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Shields that could survive direct hits from planet-killer weapons. A crew of the best and brightest humans, all sworn to absolute secrecy." "Why are you showing me this?" Lee asked. Park's expression grew grim. "Because the Council's ultimatum changes everything. We can either reveal the Vengeance and face the consequences, or we can let them discover it on their own when they start their investigation. Either way, the secret is ending." Lee looked back at the massive ship. "What kind of consequences are we talking about?" "The kind that could start a war," Park said simply. "The Vengeance violates at least 12 galactic treaties. Its weapons are banned by 3 different accords. Its very existence could be seen as an act of aggression against the Federation." The weight of the situation began to settle on Lee's shoulders. "So what do we do?" Park turned away from the window. "We prepare for the end of the Age of Secrets, Captain. Tomorrow, I will be briefing the President and the Defense Council. Within 48 hours, the existence of the Vengeance will be known to the highest levels of human government, and then We will have to decide whether to trust the galaxy with the truth about humanity's real capabilities. As they walked back through the corridors of Luna Base, Lee could not stop thinking about the ship he had just seen. For 20 years, humanity had been playing the role of the weak newcomer, the species that needed protection and guidance. But that had all been an act. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the moon, humanity had been building something that could challenge the established order of the galaxy. The secret was about to come out, and Lee had the feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, Captain Lee Tae-ho found himself inside the UES Vengeance for the first time. The transport shuttle that carried him from Luna Base had seemed tiny as it approached the massive warship. Now, walking through corridors that were wider than most starship hulls, he understood why this ship had been kept secret for so long. Chief Engineer Kim Woo-bin met him at the main airlock. Kim was a tall man with steady hands and eyes that held too many secrets. He had been working on the Vengeance since its construction began 22 years ago, back when humanity was still trying to understand their place in the galaxy. "Welcome. Aboard, Captain," Kim said with a slight bow. "Admiral Park asked me to give you the full tour. I should warn you, some of what you see today might be difficult to believe." They started in the ship's main corridor, which stretched for nearly half a kilometer from bow to stern. The walls were lined with displays showing ship status, crew locations, and weapon readiness. Everything looked normal until Lee noticed the crew members walking past them. These were not the typical human space personnel he was used to seeing. These men and women moved with the confidence of people who had seen real combat. Their uniforms were different, too, made from materials that seemed to shift and change in the light. When they saluted, their movements were sharp and precise. "How many crew members does this ship carry?" Lee asked. 2,047, Kim replied. "All volunteers, all sworn to secrecy. Most of them have been here for over 10 years. They entered a lift that took them deep into the ship's core. Kim explained that the Vengeance was built using technology that officially did not exist. Human. Scientists had been working in secret facilities since first contact, developing weapons and defenses that the Galactic Council would never approve. "The aliens made one big mistake when they first met us," Kim said as they descended. "They assumed we would be honest about everything. They never considered that humans might keep some cards hidden." The lift stopped, and they stepped out into the ship's main engineering deck. Lee's breath caught in his throat. The room was enormous, filled with machinery that hummed with barely contained energy. At the center stood something that looked like a small star contained within layers of force fields and crystalline structures. "What is that?" Lee whispered. "That," Kim said with obvious pride, "is our power source. We call it a quantum fusion reactor. It produces more energy than most space stations. The technology came from studying alien wreckage after the Battle of Proxima Centauri." Lee remembered reading about that battle in school. It had been described as a minor skirmish with pirates. A few human ships had been damaged, but there were no major casualties. The official reports made it sound almost routine. The official reports about Proxima were not completely accurate, were they? Lee asked. Kim's expression darkened. No, Captain, they were not. What really happened at Proxima was the reason we built this ship. But that story is for another time. Right now, I need to show you what the Vengeance can do. They took another lift, this time heading toward the ship's weapon decks. Kim explained that the Vengeance carried 3 types of weapons, all of which violated galactic treaties in different ways. The first weapon system they visited looked deceptively simple. Long metal tubes extended from the ship's hull, pointed toward empty space. Kim called them quantum tunneling cannons. These weapons fire projectiles that exist in multiple dimensions at once, Kim explained. They can pass through most shields and armor as if they were not there. The projectiles only become solid when they reach their target. Lee stared at the weapons. That sounds like it should be impossible. Most alien species would agree with you. They have been trying to develop similar technology for centuries without success. Humans figured it out in less than 5 years. The second weapon system was even more impressive. Kim led him to a chamber where technicians were working on what looked like enormous crystals. The crystals pulsed with internal light, and Lee could feel energy radiating from them even through the protective barriers. Reality-warping cannons, Kim said simply. They change the basic laws of physics in a small area around the target. Gravity becomes stronger or weaker. Time moves faster or slower. Matter becomes less stable. How do you even test something like that? Lee asked. Very carefully and very far from Earth, Kim replied. We have a testing facility in the Kuiper Belt. Some of the things we have learned there would terrify the Galactic Council. The third weapon system was kept in the most secure part of the ship. Kim had to scan his hand, eye, and voice before they were allowed to enter. Inside was a single massive device that filled an entire chamber. It looked organic somehow, with curved surfaces and patterns that seemed to shift when Lee was not looking directly at them. The entropy cannon, Kim said quietly. Our most dangerous weapon. It accelerates time around the target, aging anything it hits by thousands of years in seconds. We have only tested it 3 times, and each test required evacuation of everything within 10 light minutes. Lee felt sick looking at the weapon. Kim, this thing could destroy entire solar systems. Yes, Kim said. That is exactly why it exists. The aliens who forced us into the Federation believe humans are too dangerous to be allowed real weapons. They were right to be afraid, but for the wrong reasons. We are not dangerous because we are violent. We are dangerous because we refuse to give up. They continued the tour, visiting the ship's defensive systems. The Vengeance was protected by shields that could absorb energy attacks and redirect them back at attackers. The hull was made from materials that became stronger when damaged. The ship could repair itself using specialized nanobots that could rebuild entire sections in hours. But the most impressive system was the ship's artificial intelligence. Kim led Lee to a chamber where a holographic woman appeared to greet them. She had kind eyes and spoke with a voice that sounded completely human. "Hello, Captain Lee," the AI said. "I am Aria, the Adaptive Response Intelligence Assistant. I have been looking forward to meeting you." "She learns from every battle," Kim explained. Every weapon fired at us, every tactic used against us, she remembers and adapts. After 20 years of hidden conflicts, Aria knows more about space combat than any organic mind in the galaxy. Lee spent the rest of the day touring the ship. He saw laboratories where scientists worked on technologies that pushed the boundaries of known science. He met crew members who had fought in battles that never appeared in any official records. He learned about supply chains that provided the ship with resources while leaving no paper trail. As evening approached, Kim brought him to the ship's observation deck. Through the massive windows, Lee could see Earth in the distance, blue and peaceful. "Captain," Kim said, "I need you to understand something important. Everything you have seen today exists because humanity learned a hard lesson early in our contact with alien species. They do not want us to be strong. They want us to be grateful for their protection and guidance. So we pretended to be weak while building this," Lee said. "We did what we had to do to survive," Kim replied. "The Vengeance is not just a warship. It is proof that humans will never again be helpless. No matter what the cost, no matter what rules we have to break, we will protect our species." Lee looked back at the Earth, thinking about the billions of people who had no idea that their safety depended on a ship that was not supposed to exist. In 3 days, that secret would be revealed to the galaxy. The consequences would change. Everything for humanity and every other species in known space. Lieutenant Choi Yuna had never been more nervous in her entire life. She stood in the main hangar bay of the UES Vengeance, watching as alien shuttles approached the massive warship. In less than an hour, she would be leading representatives from 6 different alien species on a tour of humanity's most dangerous secrets. The decision had been made at the highest levels of human government. Rather than wait for the Galactic Council to discover the Vengeance through their investigation, humanity would reveal it voluntarily. Admiral Park So-jin had chosen Yuna to lead the tour because of her perfect memory and her ability to remain calm under pressure. The first shuttle to dock carried Ambassador Kreltha from the Valoran Empire. The Valorans were proud warriors who had ruled a quarter of the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Kreltha was tall and covered in scales that shifted from blue to silver as he moved. His forearms ended in claws that could cut through steel, and his eyes held the confidence of someone who had never been truly afraid. The second shuttle brought Dr. Nexus from the Collective, a species that valued logic above all else. Nexus looked almost human except for the pale blue skin and the extra set of eyes on the sides of his head. The Collective had the most advanced computer technology in the galaxy, and they believed that emotion was a weakness that held other species back. The other shuttles carried representatives from the Peaceful Harmony Alliance, the merchant-focused Trade Federation, the mysterious Shadow Covenant, and the aggressive Crimson Horde. Each species had different reasons for wanting to inspect human military capabilities, but they all shared one thing in common. They had underestimated humanity for 30 years. Captain Lee Tae-ho joined Yuna as the alien delegation gathered in the hangar bay. He had been chosen to assist with the tour because of his recent briefings about the ship's capabilities. Together, they would show the aliens exactly what humanity had been hiding. Remember, Lee whispered to Yuna as the aliens approached. "We show them everything. No secrets. No holding back. Admiral Park wants them to understand exactly what they are dealing with." Ambassador Krelthos stepped forward first, his scales shifting to a darker blue that Yuna knew indicated wariness among his species. "I must admit, humans, this ship is larger than our intelligence reports suggested was possible for your species to construct." "Your intelligence reports were incomplete, Ambassador," Yuna replied politely. "Please follow me, and I will show you exactly what human engineering can accomplish." She led the group through the ship's main corridors, explaining the basic layout and crew complement. The aliens seemed impressed by the size and organization, but Yuna could see they were still thinking of this as just a larger version of the ships they had seen humans use before. That changed when they reached the first weapon demonstration chamber. "This room is shielded and reinforced to withstand the testing of our primary weapon systems," Yuna explained, as they entered a chamber with thick walls and observation windows looking out into space. "We will begin with our quantum tunneling torpedoes." She pressed a series of controls, and a target drone appeared in the space beyond the windows. The drone was protected by the same type of energy shields that most alien warships used. To the Dabo, watching aliens, it would seem completely safe from any conventional weapon. "The quantum tunneling torpedo exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously," Yuna explained as technicians prepared to fire. "It can pass through energy shields, armor, plating, and most forms of matter without being stopped." The weapon fired with almost no visible effect. There was a brief shimmer in space, and then the target drone simply disappeared. Not destroyed or damaged, but completely gone as if it had never existed. Dr. Nexus spoke for the first time, his voice carefully controlled. "That weapon violates the Dimensional Warfare Treaty signed by all Federation species 200 years ago." "Yes," Yuna replied simply. "It does." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. The aliens exchanged glances, and Yuna could see them beginning to understand that this tour would not be what they had expected. The next demonstration was even more disturbing. Yuna led them to another chamber where a different type of target waited. This one was a decommissioned alien cruiser that had been donated to the Federation for weapons testing. It was protected by multiple layers of shields and armor that could withstand attacks from entire fleets. "Our reality-warping cannons change the fundamental laws of physics in a localized area," Yuna explained as the weapon systems charged. "We can alter gravity, time flow, and the basic structure of matter itself." When the weapon fired, the alien cruiser began to change. Its hull started to bend and twist as gravity became stronger in some areas and weaker in others. The ship's own structure began working against itself as the laws that held it together were rewritten. Within minutes, the cruiser had collapsed into a twisted mass of metal that bore no resemblance to its original form. The aliens watching through the observation windows had gone completely silent. "How is this possible?" whispered the representative from the Harmony Alliance, a species that had always believed in the peaceful use of technology. "Human scientists have a different approach to understanding the universe," Lee explained. We do not accept that something is impossible just because it has never been done before. The final weapons demonstration was the one that Una had been dreading. Admiral Park had insisted that the aliens see the entropy cannon in action, but Una knew that this weapon would change how every species in the galaxy thought about humanity. They moved to the most secure demonstration chamber on the ship. The target this time was an asteroid that had been moved into position specifically for this test. The asteroid was several kilometers across and made of solid rock and metal. The entropy cannon accelerates the passage of time around the target, Una explained, her voice steady despite her nervousness. Anything hit by this weapon will experience the effects of thousands of years in a matter of seconds. The weapon, charged with a sound like reality itself, was being torn apart. Energy readings spiked beyond anything the aliens had ever seen. Even through the heavily shielded observation chamber, they could feel the power building. When the cannon fired, the effect was immediate and terrifying. The asteroid began to age rapidly, its surface weathered and cracked. Radioactive elements decayed. The entire structure began to fall apart as millions of years passed in moments. Within 30 seconds, the asteroid had been reduced to a cloud of dust and particles. It had literally died of old age. Ambassador Krelthaw was the first to speak, his voice shaking slightly. That weapon could destroy entire star systems. Yes, Una replied. If we wanted it to. The tour continued with demonstrations of the ship's defensive systems. The aliens watched as the Vengeance's shields absorbed massive energy attacks and redirected them back at their sources. They saw hull plating that became stronger when damaged, and repair systems that could rebuild entire sections of the ship in hours. But it was the ship's artificial intelligence that truly frightened them. When Aria appeared as a hologram to greet the delegation, she already knew detailed information about each species present. She had analyzed their body language, vocal patterns, and physiological responses throughout the tour. I have been monitoring your reactions to our weapons demonstrations, Aria said pleasantly. I calculate that each of your species is now reassessing the threat level that humanity represents to galactic stability. Dr. Nexus stepped forward, his logical mind trying to process what he had seen. This level of military technology should not exist. Your species has been part of the Federation for only 30 years. How did you develop weapons that surpass anything we have created in millennia? Captain Lee smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Dr. Nexus, you made the mistake of thinking that joining the Federation meant we would stop trying to protect ourselves. Humans have been preparing for war since the day we learned we were not alone in the universe. As the tour concluded and the alien delegates prepared to return to their shuttles, Una could see the fear in their eyes. For 30 years, they had thought of humanity as the newest and weakest member of the galactic community. They had imposed restrictions and limitations, believing that humans needed their guidance and protection. Now they understood the truth. Humanity had been playing by the rules while secretly building weapons that could challenge the established order of the entire galaxy. The species that they had been condescending to for 3 decades had been holding back capabilities that made their own militaries look primitive. As the last alien shuttle departed, Yuna stood in the hangar bay with Captain Lee, watching the small ships disappear into the darkness of space. She knew that within hours, emergency meetings would be taking place on every major world in the Federation. "What happens now?" she asked. Lee looked out at the stars, thinking about the chain of events that had just been set in motion. "Now we find out if the galaxy is ready to accept humanity as an equal, or if they will try to force us back into the cage we were never really in." Commander Bae Jun-ho sat in his private quarters aboard the UES Vengeance, staring at an old photograph. The image showed him 23 years younger, standing with his wife and daughter on the observation deck of the colony ship New Sol. They were all smiling, excited about their new life on Proxima Centauri. His daughter Min-A had been only 8 years old then, full of dreams about exploring a new world. The photograph was all he had left of them now. A soft knock on his door interrupted his memories. "Come in," he called, quickly putting the photograph away. Captain Lee Tae-ho entered, looking tired after the day's weapons demonstrations. "Commander, Admiral Park asked me to speak with you. She thinks it would be good for me to understand why the Vengeance was built." Bae nodded slowly. He had been expecting this conversation. Every new person who learned about the ship needed to understand the real history, not the sanitized version that appeared in official records. "Sit down, Captain," Bae said, gesturing to a chair. "What do you know about the Battle of Proxima Centauri?" Lee thought for a moment. "The official reports say it was a minor conflict with pirates. A few human ships were damaged, but casualties were light. The Federation forces arrived and helped drive off the attackers." "The official reports are lies," Bae said quietly. "Every single word of them." He walked to his wall display and activated a holographic star map. The Proxima Centauri system appeared, showing the positions of planets and space stations as they had been 23 years ago. "The truth is much different. Captain, in 2402, humanity sent its first major colony fleet to Proxima Centauri. 12,000 people, including families, scientists, and engineers. They were going to build humanity's first real interstellar colony. The display showed the colony ships arriving at Proxima, establishing orbital stations, and beginning construction. On the planet's surface, everything looked peaceful and organized. For 6 months, everything went perfectly," Bae continued. "The colonists were building cities, growing food, and sending back excited reports to Earth. My family was part of the second wave of colonists. We arrived just as the colony was really beginning to thrive." Lee watched the display, seeing the colony growing and expanding. "What went wrong?" Bae's expression darkened. "The Galactic Council decided that humanity was expanding too quickly. They were concerned about our aggressive tendencies and our unpredictable nature, so they sent a peacekeeping fleet to Proxima to evaluate the situation." The star map changed, showing a massive fleet of alien warships entering the system. There were over 200 ships, led by the Valoran Empire with support from the Collective and several other species. The peacekeeping fleet was commanded by Admiral Kethvar of the Valorans, Bae said. He was a veteran of dozens of conflicts, known for his efficient methods of dealing with what he called problematic species. "What did they want?" Lee asked. wanted humanity to abandon the colony and return to Earth. They said we needed more time to prove we could be trusted with interstellar expansion. They gave us 72 hours to evacuate everyone. The display showed the human colony ships and defense platforms, tiny compared to the alien fleet surrounding them. Lee could see immediately that any resistance would be hopeless. The colonial government tried to negotiate, Bay continued. They offered to accept Federation observers, to limit the colony's growth, to follow any restrictions the Council wanted, to impose. But Admiral Kethvar had already made his decision. They attacked? They gave us 12 hours instead of 72. Said it was a generous compromise. Bay's voice was steady, but Lee could see the pain in his eyes. The colonists tried to evacuate, but there were too many people and not enough ships. The families with children were supposed to go first. The display showed the evacuation beginning, transport ships launching from the planet's surface toward the waiting colony vessels. But there were so many people, and the process was taking too long. I was helping coordinate the evacuation from the orbital station where my family was waiting, Bay said. We had managed to get about 3,000 people off the planet when Admiral Kethvar decided we were moving too slowly. The star map showed what happened next. The alien fleet opened fire on the human ships trying to evacuate the colonists. Not warning shots or attempts to disable them, full-power attacks meant to destroy. They said later that we had been loading military equipment instead of civilians, Bay said quietly. They claimed we were trying to establish a secret military base and that they had to act to protect galactic security. Lee stared at the display in horror. But that was not true. Of course, it was not true. We were loading children and families and elderly people who could not move quickly enough. But Admiral Kethvar needed a justification for what he was about to do. The holographic display showed the destruction of the human evacuation fleet. Ship after ship disappeared in bursts of alien weapon fire. The colony ships that had brought hope for humanity's future were reduced to debris in minutes. 8,000. People died in the first hour, Bay said, including my wife and daughter. They were on one of the first ships hit. The silence in the room was overwhelming. Lee tried to imagine watching his own family die while being powerless to help them. What, about the other 4,000 colonists? Lee asked. The survivors on the planet were taken prisoner by the peacekeeping forces. They were held for 3 months while the Council decided what to do with them. Eventually, they were allowed to return to Earth, but only after signing agreements never to speak about what really happened at Proxima. The display showed the aftermath. The thriving colony was destroyed, its buildings leveled, and its infrastructure dismantled. Within a year, there was no sign that humans had ever been there. The official story was created by the Council's Information Office, Bay explained. They said pirates had attacked the colony and that Federation forces had arrived just in time to save most of the colonists. The few hundred casualties were described as unfortunate, but unavoidable. But you were there. You saw what really happened. I was one of 12 people who witnessed the attack from beginning to end, and refused to sign the silence agreements. The Council classified us as security risks and assigned us to long-term deep space monitoring missions. They thought we would eventually give up and accept their version of events. Bay walked to another wall display, this one showing the early construction of the UES Vengeance. Instead, we found each other, and we found others who had lost family and friends at Proxima. Dr. Han Mi-young lost her husband and 2 sons. Engineer Park Sang-woo lost his parents and sister. Captain Oh Dong-wook lost his entire extended family. So you decided to build the Vengeance. We decided that humanity would never again be helpless, Bay corrected. We started with salvage from the battle. The aliens had left debris from our destroyed ships floating in space, thinking it was worthless. But human engineers are very good at making something from nothing. The display showed the painstaking process of recovering and analyzing the wreckage. Human scientists worked in secret facilities throughout the outer solar system, studying alien technology and developing countermeasures. Dr. Han Mi-young was the breakthrough, Bay continued. She figured out how to reverse engineer the aliens' quantum field generators. Within 2 years, we had working prototypes of weapons that could penetrate their shields. How did you keep it secret? Very carefully. We used resources that officially did not exist. We recruited people who had reasons to distrust the official story about human-alien relations. We built everything in the outer system where nobody would think to look. The construction of the Vengeance had taken 15 years. 15 years of careful planning, secret recruitment, and technological development. All driven by the memory of what had happened at Proxima Centauri. The ship was not built for conquest or expansion, Bay said. It was built so that no human colony ship would ever again be destroyed by aliens who think they know what is best for our species. Lee looked at the displays showing the completed Vengeance. And it worked. There have been no more attacks on human colonies. Because there have been no more attacks to stop, Bay replied. The Vengeance has been busy for 20 years, Captain. We have prevented 17 different attempts to limit human expansion. We have stopped 3 planned attacks on Earth itself. We have eliminated threats that would have destroyed our species. Eliminated? Ships disappear in deep space, Captain. Accidents happen. Pirates attack remote outposts and leave no survivors. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and sometimes dangerous people meet unfortunate ends. The weight of what Bay was saying settled on Lee slowly. The UES Vengeance had not just been humanity's secret guardian. It had been humanity's secret weapon, striking at threats before they could become public knowledge. How many people know the real story about Proxima? Lee asked. Everyone aboard this ship, Bay replied. And now you. The galaxy is about to learn that humanity has been keeping secrets for 30 years. But they will never learn the real reason why those secrets were necessary. Bay picked up the photograph of his family again, looking at their smiling faces one more time before putting it away. My wife used to say that the best way to prevent a war is to be so well prepared for it that nobody wants to fight you, he said. The emergency alarm aboard the UES Vengeance began screaming at exactly 0347 hours ship time. Captain Oh Dong-wook was already awake in his command chair, reviewing reports from the alien delegates' tour, when the first warnings appeared on his screens. "Contact!" shouted Lieutenant Park Ji-min from the sensor station. "Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Distance 12 million kilometers and closing fast." Oh had been expecting something like this. The revelation of the vengeance to T. The alien delegates had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Within hours, every major government had been holding emergency meetings, but not all of those meetings had been about diplomacy. How many ships? O asked calmly. 237 vessels, Captain. Mixed fleet composition. I am seeing Valoran heavy cruisers, collective battle cruisers, and ships from at least 6 other species. O studied the tactical display as more information appeared. This was not a regular Federation fleet. The ship configurations and energy signatures belonged to a group he recognized from intelligence reports. The Purifiers, a militant organization that believed humanity should be eliminated before they became too dangerous. "Sir," called Communications Officer Lee Da-young, "we are receiving a transmission on all frequencies." "Put it through." The main screen activated, showing a Valoran commander with scarred scales and cold eyes. O recognized him immediately. Admiral Vorkesh, leader of the Purifier movement and one of the most dangerous military minds in the galaxy. "Human vessel," Vorkesh said, his voice filled with disgust. "You have violated every treaty and agreement that governs civilized species. Your weapons are an abomination that threatens the stability of the galaxy. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." O smiled and activated the ship's response system. "Admiral Vorkesh, this is Captain O Dong-wook of the UES Vengeance. Your reputation precedes you. I believe you were present at the Battle of Proxima Centauri 23 years ago." The alien commander's expression shifted slightly. "I was a junior officer then. We showed mercy to your species that day. A mistake we will not repeat." "Mercy?" O laughed, and there was no humor in the sound. "You call the murder of 8,000 civilians mercy? You have an interesting definition of the word." The transmission cut off, and O turned to his crew. These men and women had trained for this moment for years. They had run simulations of exactly this scenario dozens of times. Now they would find out if their preparations had been enough. "All stations report status," O ordered. "Weapon systems online and ready," called Chief Gunner Nam Tae-kyung. "Shields at maximum power," reported Defense Coordinator Yoon Soo-bin. "Aria is fully active and analyzing enemy fleet composition," added AI Specialist Cho Min-ho. The holographic form of Aria appeared on the bridge, her expression calm despite the approaching threat. "Captain, I have completed my analysis of the enemy fleet. They are using a standard Purifier attack formation, designed to overwhelm targets through coordinated strikes from multiple directions." "What do you recommend?" O asked. "Total destruction," Aria replied without hesitation. "This fleet represents an existential threat to humanity. There can be no survivors to report our true capabilities." O nodded. He had hoped it would not come to this, but the Purifiers had made their choice. "Very well. Begin the demonstration." The first phase of the battle began as the enemy fleet reached optimal firing range. 237 alien warships opened fire simultaneously, filling space with enough energy to destroy entire planets. The attack was so massive that it created a brief artificial star between the two fleets. The Vengeance absorbed every single shot, The ship's reality-warping shields bent the laws of physics around them, redirecting the incoming energy into other dimensions. What could not be redirected was absorbed by hull plating that became stronger with each impact. The massive warship emerged from the attack completely undamaged. "Their turn is over," O said quietly. "Begin ours." The quantum tunneling cannons fired first. 12 projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously passed through the alien fleet's shields, as if they were not there. 12 enemy. Ships simply ceased to exist, their matter scattered across several dimensions. The reality-warping cannons fired next. Gravitational fields around 30 enemy ships suddenly became chaotic. Some ships were crushed by their own weight as gravity increased 1,000-fold. Others were torn apart as different sections experienced different gravitational pulls. A few lucky ones were simply flung away at incredible speeds, their crews experiencing forces that no organic life could survive. But it was the singularity torpedoes that truly demonstrated humanity's technological superiority. Each torpedo created a miniature black hole that lasted for exactly 10 seconds. In that time, the artificial singularities consumed everything within a 50-kilometer radius. 60 enemy ships disappeared into points of infinite density before. The black holes collapsed safely. Admiral Vorkesh's flagship tried to retreat, but the Vengeance was faster. The human warship's engines warped space-time around it, allowing it to move at speeds that should have been impossible. Within minutes, the Vengeance had positioned itself directly in front of the fleeing enemy command ship. "This is your last chance to surrender." O. Broadcast to the alien fleet. The response was another coordinated attack from the remaining ships. Every weapon in the Purifier fleet fired at once, creating an explosion that could be seen from neighboring star systems. When the light faded, the Vengeance was still there, completely unharmed. "Area," O said calmly. "Activate the entropy cannon." "Target acquired, Captain. All enemy vessels are within range." The most terrifying weapon ever built by human hands began to charge. Energy readings spiked beyond anything ever recorded. Even the crew of the Vengeance could feel the power building as reality itself was prepared to be rewritten. Fire. The entropy cannon unleashed a wave of accelerated time across the entire enemy fleet. Ships that had been built centuries ago suddenly experienced those centuries in seconds. Metal corroded. Electronics failed. Organic crew members aged and died before they could even understand what was happening to them. Within 30 seconds, the entire Purifier fleet had been reduced to debris and dust. 237 warships had literally died of old age, their matter returning to the cosmic dust from which they had originally formed. The bridge of the Vengeance was silent, except for the quiet humming of the ship's systems. O looked at the sensor readings, confirming that no enemy vessels remained intact. The most powerful fleet the Purifiers had ever assembled had been destroyed by a single human ship in less than 10 minutes. "Captain," called Lieutenant Park Ji-min, "I am detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching. Large fleet, but these are Federation ships." O was not surprised. The battle had been broadcast across subspace by automated Federation monitoring stations. Every government in the galaxy had watched humanity's secret weapon destroy an entire fleet with impossible ease. "Open a channel to the Federation fleet," O ordered. The main screen activated, showing Admiral Kreltha, the same Valoran who had toured the ship just days earlier. His scales had shifted to the palest blue that his species could produce, indicating extreme fear. "Captain O," Kreltha said carefully, "the Federation Council has ordered me to escort your vessel to neutral space for immediate negotiations." "I understand, Admiral," O replied. "Please inform the Council that humanity is ready to discuss our future relationship as equals, not as junior partners who need supervision." As the Vengeance moved toward the Federation fleet, O thought about what had just happened. For 20 years, humanity had hidden its true strength, allowing the galaxy to believe they were weak and in need of protection. Those days were over. The destruction of the Purifier fleet had been broadcast to every corner of known space. Within hours, every alien government would know that humanity possessed weapons that could challenge the established order of the galaxy. The species that had been patronized and restricted for 30 years had just demonstrated that they were the most dangerous military force in known space. But O also knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come in the negotiations that followed. Humanity had proven they could not be forced to submit through military action. Now they would discover if the galaxy was willing to accept them as true equals, or if this demonstration of power would lead to an even larger conflict. The Age of Secrets was over. The Age of Equality was about to begin. Ambassador Yun-Hai Ri had never seen the Galactic Council chambers in such chaos. Representatives from 47 different species were shouting at each other in 17 different languages. Emergency sessions had been called by 12 different governments. Security forces were struggling to maintain order as delegates demanded immediate action. The cause of all this panic was playing on every screen in the chamber. The destruction of the Purifier fleet by the UES Vengeance had been broadcast across the galaxy, and the recording was being shown over and over again. Each time it played, the alien delegates seemed to become more agitated. Yoon sat quietly at the human delegation table, waiting for the session to officially begin. She had been humanity's representative to the Galactic Council for 8 years, and she had spent most of that time apologizing for human behavior and accepting restrictions on human activities. Today would be very different. Council Speaker Veltar, a tall being from the ancient ethereal species, finally managed to restore order. His telepathic abilities allowed him to project calm directly into the minds of the other delegates, forcing them to sit down and pay attention. "This emergency session will now come to order," Veltar announced. "We are here to address the recent revelation of illegal human military assets and the subsequent destruction of the Purifier fleet. Ambassador Kreltha, from the Valoran Empire, stood up first. His scales were still pale from shock, and his forearms trembled slightly as he spoke. "Speaker Veltar, what we witnessed 3 days ago changes everything we thought we knew about humanity. They have been lying to this council for 30 years. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Representative after representative stood to voice their outrage and fear. The humans had violated treaties, hidden weapons of mass destruction, and demonstrated the ability to destroy entire fleets single-handedly. Dr. Nexus from the Collective was more measured in his response, but his words were equally damning. The logical conclusion is clear. Humanity has been deliberately deceiving the galactic community while secretly developing weapons that violate numerous treaties and accords. Yoon finally stood to address the council. The chamber fell silent, as all eyes turned to the human representative. Many of the delegates had never paid much attention to her before, dismissing humanity as a minor species that needed guidance. Now they watched her with fear and suspicion. "Honored delegates," Yoon began, her voice calm and steady, "humanity has indeed kept secrets from this council. We make no apologies for doing what was necessary to protect our species." The reaction was immediate. Shouts of outrage filled the chamber. Several delegates demanded that humanity be expelled from the Federation immediately. Others called for immediate sanctions and military intervention. Yoon waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "I understand your anger. But before you pass judgment, I ask you to consider why humanity felt the need to develop these capabilities in secret." She activated a holographic display that showed the Proxima Centauri system as it had been 23 years ago. The peaceful human colony, the arriving families, the children playing in the new settlements. This is what Proxima Centauri looked like when humanity's first major colony was thriving, Yoon said. 12,000 people building a new life among the stars. The display changed to show the arrival of the Purifier fleet, led by Admiral Kethvar, the massive alien armada surrounding the helpless human colony ships. This is what happened when the Galactic Council decided that humanity was expanding too quickly, Yoon continued. A peacekeeping mission, they called it, for the protection of galactic stability. Many of the delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The official records of Proxima Centauri had been classified for over 20 years. Most of them had never seen the real footage of what had happened there. The holographic display showed the evacuation attempt, the families with children trying to reach the transport ships. Then came the moment that had changed everything for humanity. The alien fleet opening fire on civilian evacuation ships. 8,000 human civilians died at Proxima Centauri, Yoon said quietly, including women, children, and elderly colonists who posed no threat to anyone. They were murdered by a peacekeeping fleet that decided 12 hours was too long to wait for a complete evacuation. The chamber had gone completely silent. Even the most vocal critics of humanity seemed stunned by what they were seeing. The survivors were forced to sign silence agreements, Yoon continued. The official story was created to cover up what really happened. Pirates, you were told. A rescue mission that saved most of the colonists. But the truth is that your peacekeeping forces committed genocide against human civilians. Ambassador Kreltha stood up, his scales shifting to darker colors. That mission was conducted under proper Federation authority. The colonists were given adequate time to evacuate. 12 hours to evacuate 12,000 people across an entire star system, Yoon replied. With insufficient transport capacity and no assistance from the Federation forces that could have helped. You knew it was impossible and you opened fire anyway. She changed the display to show the construction of the UES Vengeance, the years of secret development, the careful recruitment of personnel who had lost family at Proxima. Humanity learned a valuable lesson that day, Yoon said. We learned that the Federation's protection only extends to species that the Council considers acceptable. We learned that our children's lives are expendable if they inconvenience the established order. The display showed intelligence reports that had been classified for decades, plans to limit human expansion, discussions about the human problem, and recommendations for keeping humanity confined to their home system. Did you think we would not find out? Yoon asked. Did you think we would not discover the dozens of proposals to restrict human activities to limit our population, to prevent us from becoming a threat to your established governments? Dr. Nexus spoke up, his logical mind trying to process the implications. These documents, they show that multiple species were planning to restrict human expansion even before Proxima Centauri. Correct, Yoon replied. The massacre at Proxima was not an isolated incident. It was the logical conclusion of 30 years of policy designed to keep humanity weak and dependent. She activated another display, this one showing shipping records, trade agreements, and diplomatic communications, evidence of a coordinated effort to prevent human worlds from becoming self-sufficient. For 3 decades, humanity has been subjected to trade restrictions that kept our colonies dependent on Federation support, Yoon explained. Our mining rights were limited, our manufacturing capabilities were restricted, our military assets were closely monitored and controlled. The pattern was clear once it was laid out in detail. Every human request for expanded mining rights had been denied. Every application for advanced manufacturing licenses had been rejected. Every proposal for improved defensive capabilities had been blocked by the Council. You created the very situation you claim to fear, Yoon said. You pushed humanity into a corner and then acted surprised when we found ways to protect ourselves. Representative Zalneth from the Trade Federation stood up, his usually confident demeanor shaken. But the weapons we saw, they violate every principle of civilized warfare. The entropy cannon alone could destroy entire civilizations. Yes, Yoon agreed. It could. And that is exactly why it exists. Humanity learned that the only way to ensure our survival was to develop weapons so terrible that no one would dare to use Proxima Centauri tactics against us again. The chamber erupted in heated discussions as delegates tried to process what they had learned. The species they had been treating as dangerous newcomers had actually been responding to systematic oppression. The weapons they feared had been built as a direct result of their own actions. Council Speaker Veltar raised his hand for silence. Ambassador Yoon, what does humanity want from this council now that your secrets have been revealed? Yoon looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who had spent decades dismissing her species as unimportant. Humanity wants what every species in this chamber already has, the right to expand freely, the right to defend ourselves, the right to be treated as equals rather than children who need supervision. And if the Council refuses? Asked Ambassador. Kreltha Yun smiled, and for the first time there was steel in her expression. Then you will discover that the UES vengeance is not the only secret that humanity has been keeping. We have had 30 years to prepare for this conversation, honored delegates. We are ready for whatever decision you make. The silence that followed was deafening. Every delegate in the chamber understood that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted permanently. The species they had been patronizing and restricting was now revealed to be the most dangerous military force in known space. The age of humanity accepting second-class status was over. The galaxy would either accept them as equals, or it would face the consequences of the weapons that fear and oppression had forced them to create. General Nam Kitai stood at the head of the conference table in the secret facility buried deep beneath the mountains of Korea. Around him sat the most powerful people in human space, all of them grappling with a decision that would shape the future of their species. The room was filled with tension. For 30 years, these men and women had worked in the shadows, building humanity's hidden defenses and keeping secrets that could start wars. Now, with the existence of the UES vengeance revealed to the galaxy, they faced a choice that none of them had wanted to make. The council session was a disaster, reported Director Lim Soo-young, her voice tight with stress. Ambassador Yoon did well, but the aliens are terrified. Half of them want to declare war on us immediately, and the other half want to surrender and beg for mercy. General Nam slammed his fist on the table. Good! Let them be afraid! For 30 years we have hidden our strength and accepted their condescension. It is time they learned to respect humanity. Respect born from fear is not real respect, argued Dr. Han Mi-young quietly. She had aged considerably since her work on The Vengeance began, her hair now completely gray and her face lined with the weight of terrible knowledge. If we reveal more of our capabilities now, we risk starting a war that could destroy both sides. Nam turned to face her, his expression hard. Dr. Han, with respect, you of all people should understand the necessity of strength. Did your husband and sons die at Proxima so that we could continue to hide in the shadows? The room fell silent. Everyone present knew Dr. Han's story, knew the personal cost she had paid for humanity's hidden arsenal. Her research had made possible weapons that violated the laws of physics themselves. My family died so that other families would not have to, Dr. Han replied, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. But if we reveal everything now, if we show them the moon-sized shipyards and the planet-killer weapons, we become the very threat they always said we were. Director Lim activated a holographic display showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. The situation is already spiraling out of control. The Valoran Empire has mobilized their entire fleet. The collective is running probability calculations on human expansion patterns. 3 species have already requested emergency defense pacts. Then perhaps it is time to show them what real power looks like, General Nam said. We have 47 hidden facilities across 12 star systems. We have weapons that make the vengeance look like a child's toy. Why are we still pretending to be weak? Admiral Park So-jin, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. Because once we cross that line, there is no going back. Right now, the galaxy sees us as a species that kept some secrets to protect ourselves. If we reveal the full extent of our preparations, they will see us as a species that has been planning conquest from the beginning. She activated another display, this one showing the locations of humanity's hidden assets. Massive shipyards hidden in asteroid fields, research stations disguised as mining operations, weapons platforms that could sterilize entire worlds from light years away. This is what we have built in 30 years of secrecy, Admiral Park continued. Not just the vengeance, but an entire shadow military that rivals the combined forces of the Federation. The question is not whether we can win a war against the galaxy. The question is whether we should. Captain Lee Tae-ho, who had been invited to the meeting as one of the few outsiders to learn about the hidden facilities, raised his hand tentatively. May I ask something? How many people know about all of this? Approximately 15,000 humans are directly involved in our hidden operations, Director Lim replied. Another 50,000 know parts of the truth. The rest of humanity believes we are exactly what we appear to be, a young species, trying to find our place in the galaxy. So we are talking about keeping secrets from our own people as well as from the aliens, Lee observed. General Nam's expression darkened. Captain, there are some truths that ordinary citizens are not equipped to handle. Do you think the colonists on New Terra would sleep peacefully if they knew their world was protected by weapons that could crack planets in half? Maybe they deserve to know, Lee replied quietly. Maybe they deserve to understand the price that has been paid for their safety. The argument that followed was intense and personal. General Nam argued for full revelation, showing the galaxy that humanity was not to be trifled with. Director Lim wanted selective disclosure, revealing only enough to maintain humanity's new position of strength. Dr. Han advocated for continued secrecy, fearing that too much truth would lead to inevitable conflict. Commander Bae Jun-ho, who had been silent throughout most of the debate, finally stood to speak. His scarred face showed the weight of 23 years spent building humanity's hidden defenses. I have spent most of my adult life working on projects that officially do not exist, he said quietly. I have helped create weapons that could destroy civilizations and defenses that could protect humanity from any threat. I have done these things because I believed they were necessary. He walked to the window that looked out over the hidden facility. Hundreds of people were working on projects that pushed the boundaries of known science, all of them sworn to absolute secrecy. But I also remember what it felt like to watch my family die while I was powerless to help them. Bae continued. I remember the helplessness, the rage, the absolute certainty that we would never let ourselves be vulnerable again. He turned back to face the room. The question we face is not about military strategy or diplomatic advantage. The question is about what kind of species we want to be. Engineer Kim Woo-bin, who had joined the meeting via secure transmission from the Vengeance, added his perspective. The crew of the Vengeance has lived with these secrets for years. We have watched humanity grow and prosper while knowing that their safety depended on weapons they could not imagine. It changes you, carrying that weight." "How so?" asked Doctor. "Han, you start to see ordinary humans as children who need protection," Kim replied. "You begin to think that their opinions do not matter because they do not understand the real dangers. You become isolated from the very people you are trying to protect." The truth of his words hung in the air. Everyone in the room had experienced that isolation, that sense of being separated from the rest of humanity by knowledge too dangerous to share. Director Lim pulled up another display, this one showing public opinion polls from across human space. The civilian population is divided. Some are proud that humanity has proven to be stronger than the aliens believed. Others are terrified that our secrets might start a war. "What about the colonies?" Admiral Park asked. "Mixed reactions. The outer colonies are generally supportive. They remember how helpless they felt when alien ships could appear in their skies without warning. The inner worlds are more concerned about diplomatic consequences." General Nam studied the data. "The outer colonies understand because they live with the reality of being vulnerable. The inner worlds have been protected for so long that they have forgotten what real danger feels like." The debate continued for hours. Each person in the room carried the weight of decisions that had shaped human history for 3 decades. They had built weapons that could challenge gods and defenses that could protect entire worlds. But they had also created a burden of secrecy that isolated them from their own species. As the meeting drew to a close, Admiral Park made the final decision. "We will maintain our current level of revelation. The galaxy knows about the vengeance and some of our capabilities. That is enough for now." "And if they discover the other facilities?" General Nam asked. "Then we will deal with that when it happens," Admiral Park replied. "But we will not voluntarily reveal weapons that could start a war unless we have no other choice." The meeting ended with everyone understanding that the age of simple secrets was over. Humanity had revealed enough of its strength to demand equality, but not enough to trigger an immediate conflict. The balance was delicate and dangerous, but it was the best they could achieve. As the participants left the hidden facility, each carried the knowledge that humanity's future hung in the balance. The species that had been underestimated for 30 years was now feared throughout the galaxy. Whether that fear would lead to respect or war remained to be seen. 1 year after the revelation of the UES Vengeance, Admiral Lee Tae-ho stood on the bridge of humanity's newest flagship, watching the construction of Earth's first public orbital defense platform. The massive structure was a symbol of how much had changed since the galaxy learned that humans had been keeping secrets. The past 12 months had been the most turbulent in galactic history. 3 species had attempted to form military alliances against humanity. 2 governments had collapsed. When their populations learned how badly they had underestimated human capabilities, the Galactic Council had been restructured twice as the balance of power shifted permanently. But humanity had survived the chaos and emerged stronger than ever. "Admiral," called Captain Park Jin-woo from the communications station, "we are receiving A priority transmission from the Valoran Empire. Ambassador Kreltha requests permission to come aboard. Lee smiled. The same Valoran who had toured the Vengeance in fear a year ago was now one of humanity's most important diplomatic contacts. The Valoran Empire had been the first major power to accept the new reality and seek alliance rather than confrontation. Grant permission, Captain. Have Ambassador Kreltha escorted to the main conference room. As Lee made his way through the corridors of the ship, he reflected on how much his own life had changed. A year ago, he had been the captain of a small, orbital defense station, completely unaware of humanity's hidden strength. Now he commanded the Human Defense Corps, the public face of humanity's military might. The conference room was already occupied when Lee arrived. Admiral Park So-jin sat at the head of the table, her hair now more gray than black, but her eyes still sharp. General Naim Kite was present via hologram from the Mars Defense Command. Director Lim Soo-young attended from her new position as head of Human Intelligence Services. Ambassador Kreltha entered the room with the measured movements of someone who had learned to respect human capabilities. His scales were the neutral blue-gray that indicated cautious optimism among his species. Admiral Lee, Kreltha said with a formal bow, "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I bring news from the Galactic Council that will interest you." "Please, sit down," Lee replied. "What news do you have for us?" Kreltha activated a holographic display showing the current political map of the galaxy. Several regions were highlighted in different colors, indicating the various alliance structures that had formed in the past year. The Council has officially recognized the Human Defense Corps as a major galactic power, Kreltha announced. Your species has been granted permanent seats on the Military Affairs Committee, the Trade Regulation Board, and the Colonial Expansion Council. Admiral Park leaned forward. All three committees? That is more than we requested. The Council recognizes that attempting to restrict human activities has proven counterproductive, Kreltha replied diplomatically. It is better to have humanity as a partner in galactic governance than as a potential threat to it. Lee studied the political map. The changes of the past year were dramatic. The collective had withdrawn from most galactic affairs, focusing on their home worlds, while they reassessed their position. The Trade Federation had restructured completely, now offering much more favorable terms to human colonies. 3 smaller species had requested protection treaties with humanity. What about the Purifier movement? Director Lim asked. Kreltha's scales shifted to darker colors. The destruction of their fleet sent a clear message throughout the galaxy. The remaining purifier cells have gone underground, but they no longer represent a significant threat. Most species that supported them have distanced themselves from anti-human activities. General Nam spoke from his holographic projection. And what about the species that are still opposed to our new status? The ethereal dominion continues to resist the changes, Kreltha admitted. They believe that human weapons represent a fundamental threat to galactic stability. However, they are isolated in this position. Most species have accepted that cooperation is preferable to conflict. Lee activated another display, this one showing the current deployment of human military assets. The UES Vengeance remained humanity's most powerful warship, But it was no longer alone. 3 more ships of similar capability had been revealed over the past year, each one assigned to protect a different region of human space. We have been as transparent as possible about our defensive capabilities, Lee said. Every human military asset is now registered with the Council. We have opened our shipyards to inspection. We have shared non-critical technologies with allied species. This was not entirely true, and everyone in the room knew it. Humanity still maintained significant hidden assets, but the galaxy now understood that humans possessed weapons that could challenge any threat. The balance of fear and respect was carefully maintained. Captain Park Jin-woo approached the table with a data pad. Admiral, I have the latest reports from our colony worlds. Expansion is proceeding ahead of schedule. Lee reviewed the information. In the past year, humanity had established 14 new colonies and expanded 12 existing ones. The trade, restrictions that had limited human growth for decades had been lifted. Mining rights that had been denied for 30 years were now being approved routinely. The outer colonies report a 40% increase in population growth, Lee noted. People are finally confident that human worlds will be protected. Ambassador Kreltha nodded approvingly. The Valoran Empire has benefited greatly from increased trade with human colonies. Your species has a remarkable talent for innovation and adaptation. This was another major change. For 30 years, human innovations had been carefully controlled and limited by galactic regulations. Now human technology was being sought after by species across the galaxy. Quantum computing systems, advanced materials, and medical treatments developed in human laboratories were revolutionizing entire sectors of the galactic economy. Admiral Park stood and walked to the window that looked out at the orbital construction. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we had been honest from the beginning, if we had revealed our capabilities when we first joined the Federation. We would all be dead, Director Lim said bluntly. The galaxy was not ready to accept a powerful human presence 30 years ago. We needed time to prove that we could be trusted with advanced capabilities. And the cost of that proof was Proxima Centauri, Lee added quietly. The room fell silent, as everyone remembered the price that had been paid for humanity's current position. 8,000 civilians had died because the galaxy had not been ready to accept human equality. Their sacrifice had led to the creation of weapons that now protected billions of humans across dozens of worlds. Engineer Kim Woo-bin joined the meeting via communication link from the research station where he now worked. Admiral, I wanted to report that the new defensive platforms are operational. Earth now has the same level of protection as our most secure colony worlds. Lee smiled. For the first time in human history, Earth itself was protected by weapons that could defeat any possible attack. The home world that had been vulnerable for so long was now one of the most secure locations in the galaxy. What is the status of the new construction projects? Admiral Park asked. The shipyards at Titan are producing vessels at twice the rate we projected, Kim reported. The new ships incorporate technologies that we have learned from studying alien wreckage over the past 20 years. They are not as powerful as the Vengeance, but they are more than sufficient for defending human interests. Ambassador Kreltha looked impressed. Your species continues to surprise us with your rate of technological advancement. Humans learn quickly when we are motivated, Lee replied. We have had 30 years of motivation. As the meeting drew to a close, Lee reflected on the changes that had transformed not just humanity's position in the galaxy, but the galaxy itself. The species that had been patronized and restricted for decades was now one of the most influential powers in known space. But the real change was not in humanity's military strength or political influence. The real change was in how other species viewed humans. They were no longer seen as dangerous children who needed supervision. They were respected as equals, who had earned their place through strength, determination, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary to protect their people. The age of secrets was over, but the age of equality had only just begun. Humanity had proven that they would never again accept second-class status in the galaxy. They had shown that underestimating human capabilities was a mistake that could have deadly consequences. As engineer Park Sang-woo worked in his laboratory on designs for even more advanced weapons, he knew that humanity's story was far from over. The species that had refused to be helpless at Proxima Centauri would continue to push the boundaries of what was possible. The galaxy had learned to respect humanity's strength. Now they would discover that human ambition knew no limits.